Welcome to ShareView. We're here with Tom Hinton, who's Head of Capital Markets at the Syndicate Room, and he is going to tell us all about what Syndicate Room does and the exciting world in which it occupies.
Yeah, hello. It is an exciting world. I have a very grand title for a very small team, but we're very effective. And Syndicate Room is a crowdfunding platform, but we like to call ourselves intelligent equity crowdfunding. So what that means is every round that comes to Syndicate Room has a lead investor behind it. And that lead investor is a professional investor who negotiates the terms and the valuation with each company. So I guess distinct from entrepreneur-led valuations on other platforms, you get real diligence, real, negotiation between the entrepreneur and the investor. And then our investors, our members on Syndicate Room, get to benefit from that know-how and come in on the same terms and the same valuation. So,
well, let me just stop you on that, because I've thought about this for a long time. I have a few months to think about this, and as I was telling you offline, I've been involved in the stock market on most sides of the fence. Let's say I don't actually see why you necessarily want to call this crowdfunding, given that crowdfunding is a two-edged sword as far as its profile is concerned. And also, I don't see the difference. If it is intelligent equity crowdfunding, there's no difference between that and the normal old-style stockbroker where you'd phone them up and they'd say, "Oh, Zach, I've got some. There's been a placing in this stock which I think you should take.
Yeah.
You could make a few bob with that." What's the difference?
Well, no, I think it's a very fair point, and you've touched on an internal discussion. Are we actually crowdfunding? I mean, we see ourselves as a investment platform. We fall within crowdfunding from a regulatory perspective, but what we do is offer curated investment opportunities on a platform which uses technology to make the fundraising much more efficient. So, I guess back to your question around, what are we different from a stockbroker, is that we don't use old 20th century technology. We use 21st century technology to make things easier, to present the investment case to our investors in a really interesting and dynamic way, and to help them understand it and give them, access, which is our key word, is access to opportunities that they otherwise wouldn't have access to. So when Gonzalo, the founder, set it up, he saw that there were angels and professional investors getting access to really, really interesting transactions. But crowdfunding wasn't giving them the underlying investors, those opportunities. So what we did was put, sophisticated retail investors together with professional investors and made them pool their capital for a really effective way for the company and for investors alike.
But that's what that's sort of what I'm getting back to, because in the 80s and 90s, let's say before the internet, and when you phone up your old boy network stockbroker, that was curated. You were getting in, if you were big enough, if you had $1 million or $2 million or whatever the equivalent was, then you'd get in on the ground floor. Otherwise, if you were an ordinary Joe, you wouldn't. It seems to me that the idea behind the Syndicate Room is that even the ordinary Joe gets in on those type of opportunities that you used to get in the era of the pinstripes and say before Big Bang and stuff like that. But crowdfunding 2-3 years ago was a great buzzword. It was hot property. It was like fintech is now, but it's lost a little bit of its shine. But the message is probably to traditional investors, you're getting in on the ground floor of the best opportunities. Is that right?
No, that's absolutely right. So you get to leverage the expertise and the access that these professional investors have that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. So you hit the nail exactly on the head. And I think what's important about this type of investment, and it's not exclusive to the platform, but it's investing in early stage opportunities, is the risk that's associated with it. And I think what is incumbent upon us and the broader industry is that we're absolutely transparent about that risk. And we've had 2 companies which are no longer trading, one of which returned over 90% of the capital back to the investors. The other one went into liquidation. And the approach that we took on that was to send an email around all of our investors, let them know that the company had gone into liquidation, have an interview with the CEO, explain what happened, why it went bust, what it meant for the investors, what it meant for the company. And actually it's helpful for us because it means that we can educate the investors about investing on a portfolio basis, not throwing all your money into one opportunity, invest like a VC and hopefully 2 or 3 will have an absolutely stellar performance. You may have 4 or 5 which will carry on trading, or 1 or 2 that that will go bust. But I think people need to accept, and the industry needs to be transparent about the risk associated with the asset class.
Yeah, but that means, again, I'm not sure whether I'm playing devil's advocate or angel's advocate here, but people are aware, if you trade on AIM or you trade on other, anything in the small cap area, you know that you invest in 20 companies, 5 of them could go bust. It's not even on the main market. It's not. These things can happen. Why are you so on the defensive? I mean, it seems to be a bit strange on that front.
No, not at all. I think, to your point about the shine coming off crowdfunding as a sector, I think part of it was because that risk wasn't articulated sufficiently enough. And to your point on AIM is a very good one, because I joined Syndicate Room a year ago to give our investors access to public market equity. So we're the only platform which gives access to early stage equity all the way up to IPOs. And I think AIM's an interesting market because you have the micro cap end where, as you say, companies are high risk. Some might
come and go.
Some might come, some might go. There's limited liquidity. But there's also, companies join AIM essentially to access finance on an ongoing basis. And there's, between the sort of 50 million market cap and 1 million market cap, there's a real equity gap there which exists where very few funds actually invest in that space. So if you're a listed AIM company and you're going off to do a placing, you still have to walk the streets and meet 50 investors, and you're only maybe raising £2 million. And so your time cost of capital is extremely high. And actually, retail investors don't get access to that primary capital. So we've got this odd situation where we've got a bunch of retail investors on our platform which have risk appetite, as they've demonstrated by investing in early stage companies. It's patient capital, as they've demonstrated, because they're not going to realise that until there's an exit event. Yet they're barred from investing in primary capital on the public markets in companies which have been diligenced to an inch of their life at IPO. They've got corporate governance, or supposed corporate governance, along with on the LSE rules. They've actually proven, most of them, that they've got some sort of a track record, but the poor retail investor is barred from doing it through some sort of regulatory paternalism, which I find very odd. So I think what we're trying to do is address that, and it's difficult. You're sort of turning a.
But you're almost being like the AIM regulators yourself. So people come to you. So I'm Zachary, and I've got a fashion chain, as you might imagine, from the way I'm dressed. and therefore, you look at the business. You say, well, how much do you make a year, and who's involved? And so you're almost being you're being a regulator in your own right, really. Is that right?
Well, I mean, we do. It depends which. If we're talking about the private side, obviously we do our diligence in relation to the directors, the business plan, the people behind it, the lead investor. We make sure that the business plan stacks up and that the capital ask is actually defensible by the business plan that's presented. We also rely on our lead investor to do a certain amount of diligence themselves in relation to the valuation, the terms that they're investing in. So there are sort of a number of checks as we go through, but I wouldn't go so far as to say we're a regulator just.
But you're carrying out
we're carrying out a function which ensures that there's a standard that the companies on the platform have to pass before they're listed, which I think is absolutely right.
Right. I mean, at this stage, it's probably worth looking at just a few of the examples of what you've been involved in, so people can get an idea of where they might fit in.
On the private side, we've had a range of businesses, and I think because of our investor-led model, because we've got professional investors behind them, you will find that the type of company is probably more sophisticated than on other crowdfunding platforms. So we've had perhaps 5% sort of consumer discretionary businesses on the platform, which people might find surprising. And we've had up to, I think it's 33% life science, so that's medtech, biotech, pharma, medical devices, all that type of stuff. And then a lot of B2B IP-rich heavy businesses. So at the moment we've got a company which is listing called Embryo Care, which is a really innovative insurance product. And that's offering for the first time the opportunity for people to insure their unborn children for any any abnormalities when they're born. And we've got a film listing at the moment, for example, and a plastic recycling company. And they're raising between 600,000 to over £1 million. So really interesting, good range of SMEs.
Potentially world beating,
I mean, I think
upside is unlimited.
So I think the upside is unlimited, and particularly on the plastic, for example, the plastic one, which is listing at the moment, it's solving a real problem. And I saw a presentation by them the other day, and they made a horrifying statistic that by 2050 there will be more tons of plastic in the sea than there will be fish in the sea. And so, that is a real problem that is going to have to be solved. And this company is not necessarily the company that's going to solve it, but is going to at least developing the technology that's going some way to do that. And on the public side, like I said, we access not only sort of smaller AIM placings, which we've done for companies like Scancell and another company called Fitbug, but main market IPOs that are offered through intermediaries.
So almost overlapping with the traditional brokers that people are familiar with.
Yeah, almost overlapping. But what we're not trying to compete. We're not a broker. What we're doing is, as I said before, giving fair access to retail investors to primary capital. And
so it could be the case that some people watching say, well, I'm not really sure about the plastic in the sea thing or the embryo or whatever insurance, but at least I like the idea of the level playing field that Syndicate Room offer, and I would go for that part of the offering.
Exactly, and I think what we're trying to do on the public side is change the way that retail is bought into transactions. And if you look at AIM and IPOs on AIM, Hollywood Bowl was emitted yesterday to the market, and you'd have thought, what a great opportunity for the company to reach out to its customers, to its broader stakeholders, to bring them in, to make them shareholders, or Hotel Chocolat a few months ago, they did chocolate bonds, but for some reason retail was not able to directly access the equity, and I just find that very odd situation to be in.
Well, they'd made their money by then, hadn't they? 20 million each or whatever it was.
I think they did okay, but I think actually, without getting too philosophical on you, I think there is a broader point that a lot of people feel very disenfranchised with, or disconnected with the finance sector, with big business, all that type of thing. And I'm sure that if people had easier access to equity in our larger businesses, that would only be a positive thing for the broader investor and the public as a whole.
Right. Just finally, I understand you've got a new product to launch coming through soon.
Yeah, we do.
Can you tell us any tantalising details?
It's along the same line. So I won't reveal exactly what it is, but it's along the same lines. It's helping retail investors getting access to primary capital, curated companies that in the same model that we are following at the moment. So a lead investor, curated opportunities that they can access in a very accessible.
Well, I mean, in my experience, the retail investor gets equal opportunity to the not so successful situations, and no opportunity at getting to the good ones. But maybe that's just paranoia on my part.
No, I think it's an absolutely fair. I think it's very fair, and I think that's something that we're trying to address as well. And I think anyone who pretends that isn't the case is being a bit naive.
Okay, well, on that note, Tom Hinton, Head of Capital Markets at Syndicate Room, thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you very much.
That's it with today's Share Views. We'll see you again next week.